So I'm not going to touch too much on this, but I do think it's interesting how in the NFL there was one other game that I wanted to really feature today, and that was the Steelers' upset win or alleged kind of claimed upset win over the Buffalo Bills at Orchard Park yesterday. And these were kind of two of the more discussed teams and heavily discussed teams in the offseason. They weren't the most discussed teams. You could argue the Packers and the Cowboys and the 49ers and all, there are a bunch of other teams that were more discussed, but the Steelers and the Bills had interesting and very different trajectories coming into this season. On the one hand, for the Steelers, Big Ben is washed. He's too old. He's deciding to try and become a more healthy player. He's trying to get into better shape a little too late in his career. We've kind of just dismissed the Pittsburgh Steelers altogether. And on the flip side, everyone was absolutely infatuated and enamored with Josh Allen, claiming he's going to be the league MVP this upcoming year. The Bills have an extremely bright future. This might be the year that they take the leap, so on and so forth. And again, everyone in the media was starting to build up these narratives across both sides. And I'm not going to say that I boldly claimed or had the conviction to say that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl. Can't say that. I never said that. I'm not going to try to claim that I made that type of statement. But this wasn't shocking to me at all. In fact, I always kind of liked the Pittsburgh Steelers and never thought for 1 second that their 11-0 start last year was a mirage or that it was a fluke, which, by the way, a fluke is one of the most common fish in the sea. Because when you look at this Pittsburgh Steelers team, what defined them last year was their toughness, was their defense. This was a team that, again, their backbone was on the defensive side of the ball. So they were extremely physical. They were defensive-minded, defensive-oriented, well-coached football team last year that got off to an 11-0 start because, quite frankly, they possessed a level of physicality that the rest of the NFL didn't match until about week 12. That was why they got off to the start that they did. So their 11-0 start last year wasn't a mirage, wasn't a big hoax. This was a team that came out with a greater desire to win than other teams for the majority of the season last year. That's what they've been built on, is that defensive toughness, is that defensive intensity, that kind of blue-collar, rugged, brute way to win football games, ugly ways to win football games. And when you look at this defensive team and the lineup that they feature, TJ Watt, a Wisconsin guy, is emerging as one of the best linebackers in the NFL. I don't think it's inarguable. You can't argue that he's not one of the top linebackers in the NFL, given the fact that not only did he become the highest paid linebacker just a week ago, but you look at this guy's stats since he joined the NFL in 2017. This is just his fifth year. His rookie year, he recorded 7 sacks. Year 2, he had 13. Year 3, he had 14 and a half sacks, which was top 5 in the NFL. Last year, he led the NFL with 15 sacks, and already in the first game of the season against the Buffalo Bills, he has 2 sacks. And you pair him with Devin Bush and Melvin Ingram, who they acquired from the Chargers, and you got Cameron Hayward as your defensive end, and then their secondary is elite with Minkah Fitzpatrick and Joe Hayden and Cameron Sutton. This is a really good ball club on the defensive side, and even on the offensive side, you've got Deontay Johnson, who made an incredible touchdown catch from Big Ben, able to haul it in the corner. Chase Claypool, who was an emerging rookie wide receiver last year, and the kind of forgotten and glanced over wide receiver in Juju Smith-Schuster, who's still talented. Then you got Najee Harris, the first-round draft pick out of Alabama. Like, this is a good team. And I understand Big Ben is old, and I understand that he's immobile, and his QBR wasn't great. But this is a team that's coached by Mike Tomlin, who's never had a losing season in his coaching career. This is a guy that led the Steelers to an 8-8 season with Devlin Duck Hodges as the starting quarterback. So I'm not exactly sure how, but my guess is that this team is going to find a way to make the playoffs. They'll probably go 12-5, and by hook or by crook, they're going to be in the thick of it. 7 teams make the playoffs from each conference. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Pittsburgh Steelers are able to do that. And it goes back to expectations. Our expectations heaped onto a team entering the season. Buffalo Bills, all these expectations were heaped onto this team entering the season. Pittsburgh Steelers, no one was discussing them. This was probably the first time since Tommy Maddox was the quarterback in 2003 where the Steelers were out of the spotlight, where the attention wasn't completely on them, where we could just totally appreciate the success and be pleasantly surprised by any success that they could achieve this year. That's the first time in nearly 2 decades that we can say that about the Pittsburgh Steelers, because since Ben Roethlisberger has been the quarterback, because of the success that he's had, there have been expectations that have come with it to reach the Super Bowl, to win a Super Bowl, to reach the AFC Championship game. Entering this game against the Buffalo Bills, no one said a word about the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were overlooked completely. And I never really fully bought into the Buffalo Bills. I said this last year. It's nothing personal against Josh Allen or against the Bills or Bills Mafia. I'm happy for Buffalo, New York. I think it's a great fan base that is a rabid fan base, and I think that that's fantastic to have that kind of almost cult-like following with Bills Mafia. It's great. I got nothing against them. But even when they went 13-3 last year, I never fully was sold that this was the future of the AFC. I thought that the Indianapolis Colts last year, even with a 39-year-old Phillip Rivers, was a better team. I thought that I thought that they should have beaten, by the way, the Colts I thought should have beaten the Bills in the wild card game. I thought that the Ravens with Lamar Jackson had a good opportunity to beat the Bills in the divisional round. I thought that their roster was better than the Bills' roster. They didn't play better that particular night, but their roster, I thought, on paper was better. And so I just never fully bought in to the Josh Allen mania. Not that he's not a great quarterback, because he is, but more that the Buffalo Bills were going to surpass the Chiefs in any way. In fact, I would argue that the Buffalo Bills aren't even a top 3 team in the AFC. I'd put the Chiefs ahead of them. I'd have the Browns. I'd have the Colts ahead of them. I didn't expect to put the Pittsburgh Steelers above the Bills. Maybe I don't, but they just beat them. So I'd be remiss not to at least give credit to the Steelers and say that they're better than the Buffalo Bills. And I think that the Ravens have an equally star-studded team on paper. The Chargers are coming. So I just don't even know if they're a top 3 team in the AFC if you're the Buffalo Bills. So for those of you kind of being really surprised by this outcome, I would just encourage you to kind of not be, quite frankly. Don't be that surprised, because it's not going to shock me at all if this is a team that goes 12-5 and makes the postseason. Why? I don't know. I don't know exactly why, outside of the reasons that I laid out, but they just seem to be a team that can find a way under Mike Tomlin to get the job done. And yes, they have the hardest strength of schedule entering this year. And I still can't explain it, but they're probably going to go 12-5 and make the postseason. So